Good morning, Pam.
Morning. How are you? Hang on. Let me get back to where I'm supposed to be. There I am. And how are you?
You know, it's a lot.
Yeah, this is craziness.
Yeah. It's just.
I think, I don't know if it's better or worse, but the county has definitely gotten more bureaucratic over the years. It really has.
Yeah.
I mean, and we may end up with a better product, but there's just so much paper and so much charts and that kind of stuff.
But if you remember back in the 10-year plan days, right?
I
It was
do.
2 years of that stuff.
And well, part of it was we didn't have quite that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure it's better or worse. And at one point, I remember, there's not something that gets shown publicly, but essentially Bill McMillan and whatever her name was, somebody with a J, were just going round in circles. And Jane Kornblut and I and what's her name from Faith Communities in Action, Jerry ones that just sort of took over.
Oh, really?
This is getting too bureaucratic, and we just need to make it happen. Hey, Tom.
Hey, if it's
that was the first round, not the second.
Right.
You know, there was the original global high in the sky thing, and then there was the more of the implementation stuff. And now we're here.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, and some things, guess what? We didn't end homelessness. Shocking. Shocking.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
There are people I don't know. How exciting.
I'm sure we'll start with introductions, but it looks like folks are still
That's what I figured. So I'm
signing in.
What am I trying to do? I'm trying to find a scissors. Well, that's not the scissors. I'll be back.
Well, I made it, Tom. I didn't think I was going to make this meeting. We're breaking camp tomorrow, so not this morning. So
good.
You can see we're camping out in the background. So
This is
it's
great.
amazing. Who thought you could have joined a meeting at a campground,
I'm impressed for sure. Yes. And Pam's in her backyard. And Ava's got a beautiful scenery out her window. This is better than the usual office backgrounds. Thank you for joining, Norma. I appreciate it on such short notice.
Well, I my pleasure. This was actually the first 3 Mondays of September. I'm sort of out of pocket, so
Right.
You seize the moment.
Okay. Great to hear. Thank you for doing that, though.
Hey, Maura.
Hey, good morning.
All right. I'm trying to get to the volume. Can somebody explain to me while we're waiting how this group ties with the heat, whatever you call it, the heat task force issue? Are they
Yeah.
related?
Not formally, but I think it's part of the full sort of countywide response, trying to address a number of concerns from the board members and community members about people experiencing homelessness.
Okay, because I see some overlap.
Yeah, I think for
Since
sure
there are
this is
those of us
something.
on both committees.
Yeah, we'd want to be able to highlight this in our response to the board in November, to saying we took some immediate action around heat emergencies.
Right. Okay. Okay, got it. Oh, shut up, dog. My neighborhood dogs don't like me. And when I sit out on my porch, they bark.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey,
Thanks.
Karen.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. We'll, hey, Ava, we'll give it a few more minutes and see. Let me just see if others, I really appreciate you all. I am trying to right now. Maura, there's Amanda. Maura, do you have the ability to be the host and share your screen or share rights? Will you check you were set up for this? Because I'll have to jump. Yes, you are claimed as host. I think I can. Yes, perfect. Good morning, Amanda.
It's Amanda. Oh, there she is.
She's still great.
Morning, everyone. Sorry I'm running late.
We're just getting started, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Maybe do some quick introductions. I think most of us know each other, but really appreciate you all joining. And let's start with Amanda, because you're an A.
Morning, everyone. Amanda Antieri, she, her pronouns. I'm the CEO of Funders Together to End Homelessness. We are a national network of philanthropy that believes in preventing and ending homelessness through racial and housing justice.
Thank you. Carrie?
Carrie Kincannon, retired pastor at Rising Hope Mission Church. About 30 years of working directly with the homeless and another 20 years of working with homelessness and affordable housing issues.
Thank you. Pam?
Pam Michelle, retired executive director of New Hope Housing and now promoted to citizen advocate on homelessness. I spent 31 years at New Hope Housing and some time where I knew Carrie before either of us were on Route
That's
1
right.
doing homeless services in DC. So
Yeah, we worked together in DC. That was cool.
yeah.
Great. Ava?
Hi, everyone. I am Ava Nguyen. I'm with Northern Virginia Association of Realtors.
Thank you. Eleanor?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Good morning. My name is Eleanor Vincent. I'm the COO at Pathway Homes. I've been with Pathway Homes. I think this is my 19th year. And that's it. I know a lot of you. Hi, Pam. It's amazing how people
Hi,
leave.
how are
They
you?
never quite leave. And I see and
Exactly.
Amanda too. Hi, everybody.
Thank you. John Boylan?
Hi, John Boylan from the Dulles Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Maura?
Good morning, I'm Maura Williams, Vice President of Housing and Community Services at Cornerstones.
Norma, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Norma Lopez. I'm with the Department of Neighborhood and Community Services, and I'm the Division Director of Inclusive Engagement and Targeted Interventions.
Thank you. Tom Barnett.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Barnett, Deputy Director of the Office to Prevent and End Homelessness.
Tom Fleetwood.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Fleetwood, Director of the Department of Housing and Community Development. And I would just like to note that it appears that Eleanor already has her plan for global domination ready.
There it is behind you. Thank you, Tom. Malia. Want to acknowledge you.
I'm Malia Strobel, Admin Assistant for the Task Force.
Thank you. And Regina.
Good morning, everyone. Regina Coyle with Housing and Community Development, also here to help support.
Thanks, Regina. I'm Carrie Wilson, the co-chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Council, and we'll be sort of turning this over to you all midway through our meeting. Very grateful to Eleanor and John and Maura, who will sort of facilitate this process and agreed to sort of co-chair this committee. We have a couple of their members who were not able to join this morning. Ken McMillan is moving and a couple others being confirmed. But we will get started. I apologize, I sent some things late in the early this morning, early this morning, and I just wanted to share sort of what we hoped we could accomplish with the majority of the time reserved for you all to talk about this. So the agenda that we've put up here is the introductions. I'm going to share a little bit of what brought us here, and then ask Tom Barnett to talk about the board matter that was sent out, sort of what that charge is and how we will achieve that with phase one and sort of phase two actions and sort of our charge. And then I sent out a new work plan that looked at the roles that our committee, your committee, may be able to play and really facilitate, as staff is also simultaneously working on information that will feed to this committee and that you can use as resource. But we'll focus really on what we hope this committee, with its expertise, passion, care, can lead in the documentation. And so we want to leave enough time for you all to work on that and then talk about how we go forward. Included on this agenda is, I just wanted to share with you sort of a working document that the Affordable Housing Advisory Council keeps in front of us in terms of meetings. We have an executive committee of folks that move things along, and it meets monthly. The Affordable Housing Advisory Council meets on a quarterly basis. And then we noted the Board of Supervisors Housing Committee. Our work will not conclude, but the initial presentation and response will be presented on November 22nd. And we hope that some of you will be part of that presentation, as many of you as can be part of that. There is a preliminary committee. It's actually not on the 30th, but September 27th on other issues. And then just noting some areas where board and land use. I wanted to call that out to you because these are areas and important dates that our work may overlap. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing this, but invite Tom Fleetwood or Tom Barnett in just a minute to talk a little bit about how we get here. I want to share with you personally my gratitude that you were willing to step up. In 2008, this community built a plan, devised a plan after years of work to prevent and end homelessness, declared that plan, measured its progress over a 10-year period, and then produced a retrospective or a review of sort of what had we accomplished in 10 years time, what were still the most pressing challenges and gaps, and where do we need to go from here. When the Affordable Housing Advisory Council was established formally by the Board of Supervisors or recharged a couple of years ago, They asked us not only to provide recommendations on affordable housing preservation and development, but also to consider the intersection of issues, including homelessness, health, and all other issues that affect residents of our community, and particularly to bring a perspective of inclusive engagement and looking at the equity lens, applying that to see why are we where we are today? What do we need to do in terms of strategies and resources and tools, but also what actions, justice items, areas that will allow us to make progress. So that is the journey we've taken. The advocacy of certain, particularly here in Reston, wonderful advocacy by people who really saw the conditions in terms of people sleeping on the street, who were unsheltered, who were unable to access resources, or who were not taking advantage. They were resources that weren't right for them, led to some renewed focus and energy. And I think it's kismet. I think it's a time when the board is focused on commitment to affordable housing, but it's a time to also look at sort of what that means in terms of people who are literally homeless and perhaps the most vulnerable. So that's how we arrived at today, to invite this group to really work alongside our staff, the county staff, but to synthesize documents, bring your expertise, and help us achieve a response to the board on phase 1, which is over the next 3 months, thinking about how we can support persons who are unsheltered, what are new strategies, things that we can learn from, and to take advantage of a HUD grant that has come out specifically to enable communities to address this issue. Long term, we will also document the actions needed for a new revised strategic plan. So that is the charge. There's some documents. And with that, if I might ask Tom to briefly add anything to that, and then we'll move forward on the work plan.
Mr. Fleetwood, would you like to say anything before I begin?
I would just note that that is I think a very accurate and fulsome description of where we are right now and what our charge is going forward. We got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's good work to be done, and I think we can make a lot of progress together. So, Tom.
Great, thank you. And I see Mr. McMillan just joined. So, good morning, Ken. So I'm going to share my screen, and something that will look familiar but continues to evolve is this work plan that's been updated and evolving based on feedback received from AHAC and others. So you'll remember this from last week and other AHAC meetings. This is a table with 4 rows. The first one being the updating of homelessness strategies, including identifying new or underutilized options from other communities that we could implement here. We've begun to highlight who is going to be involved specifically and pushing and leading this effort. So this is staff and this committee here today, with the first phase going into November, and then phase 2 moving beyond, as Carrie just described. I'm going to come back to this row because I think this is really where most of the work of the committee will be, but I wanted to talk about the other 3 rows just so folks were familiar with it, because they're more staff oriented. So the board directed staff to conduct an operational assessment, including the use of hotels, sort of cost benefit analysis. We're working with the internal audit office, who's working as sort of management advisors, to understand how do we measure performance in preventing and ending homelessness. So they're reviewing those things as well as hotel costs. They're also going to want to engage providers to understand the operational and systems challenges that homeless service providers are experiencing, including staffing, mental health, and other human services needs, so that these all together will be included in the final presentation in November to the Board of Supervisors at their housing committee. We're also reviewing zoning options, engaging the Office of the County Attorney and the Department of Planning and Development to document both what is currently allowed If you remember the board matter, and Carrie did include a copy in this morning's email, it directed staff to look at commercial and industrial areas in terms of what could be done for shelter and other homeless services. So we're reviewing that, and we're actually fleshing out some options or recommendations that will be vetted with the Affordable Housing Advisory Council, specifically through the lens of developers and operators of homeless services, and what would these potential new things do to the zoning ordinances that it might allow, whether it's shelter or permanent supportive housing or other types of services that are needed. And again, this would be finally presented to the board's housing committee in November. And finally, the last one that's staff-led is finding locations for permanent supportive housing. We are currently mapping these locations throughout the county and identifying projects that are already in the pipeline. The two largest and most notable is Cornerstones and the West Docks property with the Housing Authority, as well as the Lamb Center and Wesley Housing joint venture in the city of Fairfax, not far from their drop-in center. So we are identifying also what are the policies and resources that's going to be needed both now and in the future to create more permanent supportive housing, defining the desired criteria, researching potential locations and policy considerations, and making sure that we're considering more than just the housing resources, but how will we provide services? How will we fund and operate services in permanent supportive housing to help people stay housed? So those are the staff-led ones, and I'll go back up here to the top and walk through briefly the one where this committee will be most active. So this committee is being formed. It's gone through July and August. The intention is to build on all the work that has already been done, both through our 10-year plan and the retrospective that was published and shared with the board, as well as work from national leaders such as Community Solutions and their Built for Zero effort, share some of the results of the DC-wide racial equity systems analysis that was done through the Council of Governments, but also all 9 continuum of care. All 9 jurisdictions across DC participated in this. And we'll need to, as it says here, immerse in existing and ensure we look long-term on the impacts of other populations beyond the unsheltered. So at our last meeting, our first meeting, our last one last week, members brought up domestic violence, people who have been involved in the criminal justice system, whether incarcerated in jail or prison, and other populations such as mental illness. But as Carrie mentioned, we want to make sure that we are focusing on the unsheltered homelessness population first. It's both the issue that has driven this conversation from the board's attention, and also been a concern from groups like the NAACP, as they're concerned about climate change and the extreme weather and potential hyperthermia. So a separate group has been started up, of which Maura and Carrie are both members of this heat emergency response stakeholder group. So there is some tie-ins there, but we need to develop a comprehensive plan around addressing unsheltered homelessness to align with this HUD funding opportunity, the special notice funding opportunity for $5.6 million for Fairfax County. But we want to make sure we're using an inclusive community engagement model that's been adopted by Fairfax County. And that's why Norma is here today to help us think about some of the important decisions that will need to be made. So support from the Department of Neighborhood and Community Services, and Community Solutions, as I mentioned last week, is also very interested in helping lend their expertise to our strategic planning, whether it be before November or after November or both. They are eager and hope to work with Fairfax County and in on-site meetings here in Fairfax. So come October, we'll need to conclude the first phase of community engagement, prepare some short-term recommendations around unsheltered homelessness and the utilization of HUD resources, document our findings and recommendations in preparation for the presentation in November. We've heard from AHAC quite clearly that we want to use less jargon, speak more clearly about the impacts to people, using personal profiles, using visuals, addressing positive outcomes for the community at large, and making clearer statements around social and racial equity. And then, as I mentioned, the presentation to the board's housing committee in November, with work continuing afterwards, updating our homelessness strategies that derive from equity and justice and the application to our efforts, and then incorporate that work in phase 1 and beyond. So with that, let me ask if there's any immediate questions.
The only question I have, and maybe we will get into that, is where do we capture where we are in this process? You know what I mean? Like that helps me personally, just in terms of
the formatting of this work plan is probably outliving its usefulness. I think what I'm hearing is we want to see some sort of like Gantt chart or something that shows time and ticking progress along multiple goals. I think the work plan that Carrie emailed this morning may be helpful to get to that.
all right, Carrie. Thank you. Thank you.
But as staff, I'm happy to help provide additional sort of visualizations or whatever is going to be useful for the committee. Are there any other questions?
And we think, you know, this is clearly, this is a lot of work and a lot to ask of you all. And I think for today's meeting, we hoped, Tom, I can share the other work plan, or if you all have it in front of you, but just to say, I tried to take what had been presented to the Board of Supervisors and again, side by side. So exactly sort of beginning to think about there are these simultaneous things going on, but what are the roles for the committee versus the staff, and sort of where do they run alongside? And I'm going to be jumping off here, and John and Eleanor are going to take over facilitation. Maura, just so you all know, popped off to, we have an issue over at the shelter and she popped off for a second. She'll be back. But this was, again, in the same way Tom just walked through that, as we think about our documents, access to reports, what do you all need as resource, trying to document some of these elements for phase 1 and phase 2. But this is what we hoped you all would talk about today. How do we engage this community? Who is it that we should be talking to? And how is that approach? You know, how do we want to lay out that approach? And so we were going to turn it over to our co-chairs to sort of walk you all through, one, reactions to all of this, just general comments that we want to document, and then really talking about how to begin having these stakeholder meetings that, again, will be data that inform the process, as well as the data that Tom mentioned, the COG racial equity study that has a lot of information that we need to be looking at as a system, as well as identifying, I think, some universal needs from the population of people that we are serving that we need to incorporate. So I'm gonna stop there. I know, Regina, if you can share this plan as needed, but I think that's the charge to you all today, to spend your time and then decide a meeting schedule.
Hey, Carrie, before you disappear,
yes,
we talked about having some actual homeless folks come address. I don't know that they would be comfortable coming to address us or jumping on a Zoom, which I doubt they have. Is it possible for your folks or somebody to maybe video and maybe think about 2 or 3 questions where they might be willing to answer the questions? And that way we get a sense that we've actually have taken the effort to incorporate their feelings and thoughts in this instead of trying to do something might be too hard.
I think that's it definitely where certainly staff can help support the providers and reaching out to the people who are experiencing homelessness today, and it was particularly those who are literally homeless. Our thought was that that might be done on this kind of a basis, John, exactly going out to people, and documenting that. And I know more, and Eleanor, Amanda can talk more about that and that process, but the other stakeholders are certainly talking to the providers of what they're seeing on the other end. What do they need to better support and engage? So absolutely, I think there are going to be different outreach strategies. You could ask the NAACP Housing Committee to join you on a call. There's a faith leaders network that are working on this. And I'm going to stop and turn it over to the experts because all of you have those networks. And I will turn it over to you all from here and pop off. It's really nice when I can say thank you and then get out of the way. So so grateful to each of you for your time.
Thanks,
And I
Carrie,
apologize,
appreciate
I
it.
have another board call I have to do.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Carrie.
y'all.
Hey, Tom, could you share, what is, and I think I've said this before, but begin with the end in mind. The presentation to the board, is it 10 slides? Is it 10 minutes? Or what is the end product ideally that you're looking for? Recognizing we could change it and have option A and B, but what are you actually looking for?
Sure. So I imagine there will be both a slide deck and a longer term report, or a bigger report. Some of the details are going to be too specific to include it in a slide deck presentation. So the Housing Committee is an hour and a half long. Tom Fleetwood, I don't know if you know of any other items that might be on that agenda, but I suspect this will be a big part of that.
Right now, this is the sole item on the agenda. That may change. We may add something here at the end, depending on the work of this committee.
Right. So that just for everyone's information, that date of this housing committee is November 22nd from 11 to 12:30. So this is, I think right now they're still having their committee meetings in the board auditorium at the government center.
What a great opportunity to let them dwell on the issue. But if I'm either of the Toms, I'm thinking, oh, I don't need that much oversight. But I'm sure we're just a portion of what they're going to talk about during the housing. What is right? So this is just a piece of what you guys will be presenting.
Yeah, I mean, there will certainly be the operational assessment, the zoning considerations, as well as, our work around finding places for permanent supportive housing. But I think the community engagement and the updating of the homelessness strategies may be the biggest and most banner headline for this. And certainly hearing from a broad voice of folks that's not just staff, but community members, leaders.
Tom, I have a question, and it relates sort of to John's question, because I hope we can frame our work as centered in racial equity, not just equity, and be really clear and specific about that. So I'm wondering, one, does the county have a specific racial equity framework in which they're making these decisions, particularly around homelessness and housing policy? And two, have you all started, I know I was on the Chairman's Equity Task Force, we implored folks to think about equity-based decision-making models. So the work of engaging people with lived experience and historically marginalized communities could feel transformative rather than transactional. And I just want to know if there's been any work done on that, because I would hope this committee would not only come out with recommendations, but design a process in which we can say this is a new way of working that is more transformational, centered in equity and justice principles, to be a guide to how to engage community. So would love to know what work you all in the county have been doing on that.
Sure, and I think we have an opportunity where things are aligning, both in terms of the county's model, as Norma can talk more about, in terms of the inclusive community engagement model, but also HUD's expectations around the special NOFO and engaging people with lived experience, focusing directly on racial equity, We have not done a lot of community engagement in recent years through the pandemic and since the end of the 10-year plan. So this is an opportunity to put this into practice and walk the walk.
If I may, Amanda, just to follow on that, with respect to housing development, we have developed a tool that we are using to evaluate opportunities that emerge in the market to develop new housing, and that both evaluates under the metrics and tenets of our One Fairfax policy, as well as the countywide strategic plan. So, you know, I would describe us as still kind of being novice level, but we are making strides towards a much more you know, equity lens based decision making model.
If I could,
Though, just to clarify, but in terms of, Tom, your department, there's no framework in which you all are evaluating policies, practices, and recommendations under a racial equity lens.
No,
Is that
not
correct?
currently. I think that would be a great thing to include in the development of our recommendations.
yeah,
And
Amanda,
actually,
go
I have
ahead.
a question, if you don't mind, John. I do have a question for Amanda before we move from her. So Amanda, do you have a tool, such a tool that the committee could look at in terms of incorporating that?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple. One that was developed by the National Homeless Services Providers that actually influenced the NOFA that you're talking, both of the NOFAs that are coming out. I'll drop that in the chat. I think it was also included in the task force recommendations, but there's two different ones I'll drop in the chat that you all should take a look at.
Thank you.
And as you know, we have a inclusive community engagement framework. And that incorporates, you know, inclusive, equitable principles of how you should engage communities and talk. And we also have the framework where we revise the public participation spectrum of the International Association of Public Participation that looks at engaging the community in a much more equitable way, inclusive way, but also where they weigh in on the decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And that framework, which I can share with you all, that is what we are going to use with the community engagement effort in October with a homeless community. So we're already been using that framework. That framework has been informed by the One Fairfax policy. And it continues, and we even do the feedback and how we design the level of engagement, what kind of tools we use. It's all based on the principle of inclusive, equitable community engagement. So we've been doing that for about a year now or more.
Mm-hmm.
And that framework keeps on getting a little tweak here and there, but like I said, I can share that with you all, what we have. And
okay.
Regina, did you have a question? You had your hand raised.
Thank you, John. Yes, I did. I wanted to add that the Department of Housing and Community Development is working in close cooperation with the One Fairfax office. There is a pilot equity impact assessment tool that we began using earlier this year on select items that move to the Board of Supervisors, but we're doing it in concert with the countywide effort during this period from February until the fall. There's a work group that's evaluating that tool for its pros, cons, and refining it for improvement. So we are a part of that effort. So that tool is evolving, and you'll hear more about that from the countywide One Fairfax office as we roll it out more than it's been used thus far. And I believe we can share that tool as it is in draft form today with this group.
Awesome. Thank you, Regina. Amanda, if I could, I've spoken one-on-one with a couple of folks on here and on the AHAC, and I tell you what, I scratch my head on it because usually I can figure it out or figure out the roots. The whole racial component of this just baffles me, and there's not an easy answer. My only concern with this group is that we try to put a stamp or check a box and say we addressed it or we got it, because I don't think we're going to fix it and address it appropriately in 90 days. And so all I ask is that we make sure we don't forget this. This is a real priority, but we got to figure out, much like we had a preservation committee and we said, hey, we got to take a look at this manufactured homes. It needs us to really focus on this problem. And I think we need to do something similar with this. I don't want to prejudge where we are. If there's something here or we recognize somewhere else that we've done stuff, obviously we've got a few programs, but we're not where we need to be. I really think this is something we raise and probably will come out of it with another group that says, let's focus on this and figure out how to make some measurable improvements on these numbers, because it just doesn't make sense to me. Any other thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, can I just ask for clarification? What baffles you exactly?
Yeah, well, the racial component. How do we have the disparity of folks of color that are homeless when we've got such a small percentage of the actual overall population? Why do we have so? I mean, I've heard folks say it, but we've got to address these. These are things they're fixable. If we can identify the problem, we should be able to address it. And it's not getting fixed. It's not getting better. So, and I know all the folks here, all the not-for-profits, all the government folks have a charge to address this and look at it, but it's not getting better. And I think that's something that we need to spend a lot of some time to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is structural racism, and that we haven't addressed any of those things in 400 years. So we're not going to fix 400 years of oppression in 90 days. But I think the committee can continuously point to the structural issues that underline, like, I think the problem that we have in any workforce or task force is that we're putting policies and practices on top of a structure that is fundamentally flawed and rooted in structural racism and native erasure. So I think all we can do is start to identify those things and chip away at them, and at least say that our committee had a lens to it or grounded in the work and not some like side thing. That's all I was saying. And I think this committee is committed to that, but that we really be clear about these issues are rooted in not just the racial disparities we see, but the deep structural racism that's embedded in our systems. And I'm happy to provide resources for folks who need some better understanding about how we got here. I think housing is like one of those things that we can actually point to where we know the laws and policies and practices that are really clear to how we got here. Undoing them is going to take a lot more work than maybe this committee is charged to do, but we should at least be identifying and addressing some immediate things that we recommend.
Yeah, and if I can just add, I think because there's so much and it's so big that we have to take a focused approach. Otherwise, we are going to get lost, and 3 months is going to come and go, and we're going to still be scratching our head. So to that point, even that we only have about 20 minutes before the end of this meeting, my suggestion would be that we look at the task that was laid out for us today, which is to have a discussion about which stakeholders we think should be at the table and how we're going to be doing that. I think that's a deliverable for this meeting that's going to wrap up in like 20 minutes. So maybe Norma, and that was one of the reasons we said last meeting, we said Norma would come in today and kind of talk to us about how that engagement process is working out and how we might be able to tap into it. Because Amanda, to your point, I think we already know. I think the assessment's been done in terms of what is the reason why we are where we are, and that what we need to deliver to the Board of Supervisors is a summary of those findings, and then what recommendations, what we've done to begin to chip away what the recommendations are in terms of how they can support that process. In my head, that simplifies it. So maybe we could continue that discussion about stakeholder input and how we're going to proceed and with the logistics of that. At least that's my understanding of what our charge is.
Okay, I'm not a subject matter expert on homelessness. I'm a subject matter expert on community engagement, so you got to bear with me. My first question is, and I think that John brought it up in terms of, how do we go to the community, go meet them where they're at? And that's one of the things we want to do. My question would be, where is the captive audience with respect to the homeless community that we can then engage them at their various places? The other thing, is there a place, and this is again, I'm not knowledgeable, where we can bring them so that we can begin to design, and we first design the questions that we want them, and then we would begin to facilitate the questions that we think we want answers to, that would inform the meeting presentation for November. So those are questions, those logistical questions I need to talk to Tom about, and then, set a timeline, have what is it exactly the purpose that we want to achieve? In other words, when we talk about lending voice or creating a space to shift the power and provide space for this homeless community to have a voice, what exactly are we trying to achieve? Those details I need to know, what is and what are we going to do with that information, and how we're going to inform back to the community what we have done with that information. All these questions, I don't think we're prepared to answer here. This is sort of a conversation that Tom and I can have with others, and then we can begin to design that community engagement, the facilitator guide, bring in the various partners that can facilitate these conversations. There's probably going to be more than just one. It's not just coming. I think that John talked about a video. That's one option, but again, it's sort of also the looping back to the community, even if we don't do it by the time we meet with the board of supervisors. But those details, I think I need to sort of hash out so that we can design that plan and say, we're going to have 3 sessions and we're going to have it October this, October that, October that. And then we begin to figure out what what the findings are, and be able to provide a slide or 2 on the findings, and then come back to the community and tell them, this is what we've done with your information. And at first, we also have to provide that. That's all part of the inclusive community engagement. You have to tell them why you're bringing them and what you're going to do with the information that they're providing you. So again, we don't have enough I don't have enough time here, but inclusive it's going to be. And I just want to say that the framework is informed by the One Fairfax policy, because we work very closely with the Chief Equity Officer on preparing this engagement process. And she's very much informed the work of my division, along with the director and the deputy director. So and I also want to say something, this is an opportunity to look at how you really engage the homeless population, the homeless community. This is kind of a first. I don't know, it may be a first, not necessarily a first in another jurisdiction, but it may be a first here to apply this new guiding principles, this new framework, using tools and setting sort of a standard for community engagement of the homeless. And this subcommittee has the opportunity to do that beginning in October. And actually, we do the plan in September. We plan in September and heavily hold the sessions in October.
I have a quick question. When we're talking about engaging homeless individuals, are we talking about those that are literally on the streets and in the woods, or are we talking about also those that are in community shelters?
I would think, I'm going to let Tom answer that, but I would think both, because if the individuals, if we can bring them, let's say, to a church, to some kind of event or something, church, where we break bread, right? And we can hold the engagement at that church, bring them from the streets. That would be one. We would go to the shelter because you have a captive audience there. So the question is, which shelters would we go to that we can have? Because one of the ways of community engagement, we have to make sure we're looking at the spectrum of the population. So the racial, ethnic background. So we gotta choose we gotta look at which one gives us more of a racial equity, sort of racial cultural cut of our participants. So those details I don't know because I'm not the subject matter, but I would say both. And the third would be if we would want to do something out and reach out, if we could, if it's feasible, target individuals that we may know spend time at a particular place and ask the questions right there on the street. That's a third way of doing it.
I think I can't speak for Rising Hope anymore because I'm retired from being the pastor there, but I think that would be an excellent spot because it is a church where 80% of the members are homeless. And that would be a great place to invite folks in. And as you said, if we had a meal there, that would invite them in and we could engage them in that sort of thing. The Lamb Center would be another good place to do something like that. And they're, on different parts of the county, so you get a different perspective from those different parts of the county.
Well, there you go. We already got two locations.
I also liked what we did when what was it, the 100,000 home campaign or whatever. And I went out with Pam and a few others, and we actually went out into the woods and to the camps and found and interviewed people there and talked with them in those locations. And that was I thought that was a way of reaching people that we don't normally reach with some of these questions and trying to find out about the issues that they're dealing with.
So can we, what do other people think? So Pam, I see a couple other people. We're also putting notes in the chat if you guys want to see that. I see Amanda's comments. And so Pam, other thoughts just in terms of engagement?
I was going to recommend Rising Hope and the Lamb Center as well, as two places. The trick for me, in addition to the racial equity issue, is how do you reach the folks who are not already somehow engaged in the system? That, there are certainly people who drop into the shelter and drop out and all that, and those folks we can get at. But like, for example, the Latino population, the homeless Latino population, I think is relatively invisible in Fairfax. They don't take advantage of the system for lots of obvious reasons. But so how do we get into why that's true and what they want and could use? So but we've done several things on Route 1. We did some stuff at Bethlehem Baptist around the trailer parks and did a meal and brought folks in, and it went really well. So you need to target and you need to get people, and Norma, I'm preaching to you, people who are leaders in that community to engage the folks who are not currently engaged. Have to do a lot from within as well as us pontificating from without.
I like the use of the word pontificating. Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
Eleanor, if I could, just really briefly, with respect to Pam's question, especially about the Latino community, I think what we can do, or one element of this we should consider, both for the immediate term and then definitely for sort of this longer term, is looking at the issue of overcrowding
Hmm.
in the, particularly in some of our really distressed, the mobile home parks, but also some of our really distressed multifamily properties where those families are doubled and tripled up and are, persistently at a risk for homelessness. So, might not be a phase 1 issue, but definitely needs to be a phase 2 issue.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. So who has not, Maura, I think Maura, I see you. Maura, do you have any thoughts on this? Because as we're wrapping up, I have an ask and a question for the group. Maybe we can get it before we go. If John doesn't have anything else. But Maura, did you have anything to add?
I apologize to everyone. I'm working at the shelter today, so if you see my camera going off and on, it's because I keep getting interrupted and asked to go handle different things here. So as we were mentioning different shelters and places to reach out to people, I am currently sitting at the Embry-Rucker Community Shelter in Reston right now. So if we really want to be inclusive of all the different places that all of our homeless neighbors frequent throughout the day, we really want to look at all the different regions within the county and all of the different homeless services, shelters, drop-ins, places not meant for human habitation, other campsites. We really want to be inclusive in touching all of those different places.
Yep. We'll be looking to you to help us with that as well. John, you wanna add anything else?
Nope, I'm good. I'm probably more, I'm worried about the task.
Right.
What we got to deliver in the end. And so, because I personally, just the opportunity to hear from experts and talk about, what we need to do and some ideas, but we got to deliver because the supervisors are depending on us to help them with a broad spectrum. Otherwise, they would just ask the Tom and Tom show to come brief them. They're asking us because we represent the community and have such a broad impact. So I think we got to make sure we frame this out and start figuring out which experts we need to hear from and how to begin writing some of this.
So that's a great segue. But Ken, were you saying something, Ken?
Actually, I wanted to apologize. I don't know what's going on, but the fire department was here and everything like that. So something must have happened in the room where where everybody's website, online thing is hooked up to. So I think they got that on, and once they cut the alarm off and everything like that, then all of a sudden I got hooked up to you all. I've been trying to get in since 9:20.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So I missed a whole lot of this. Wrapping up, does anybody have any questions for me as someone who has a extremely good background in homelessness and care and everything like that? I do want to say, I don't know if Jerry told you, but Wednesday, hopefully, will be my last day here at this dysfunctional place. I will be moving into subsidized housing at Chester Brooks and have better connections. And can you imagine me, a 69-year-old man, walking up 12 flights of stairs this morning to get my boxes? And the Home Depot guy actually got up and he ran up the steps and laid them at my door. And I caught him as I was going up. He was coming down the stairs. So we had no elevators, no nothing. They tend to turn them off and everything like that. Boy, I can't wait to blast this dysfunctional company. But does anybody have anything for me?
Ken, I don't have any questions for you, but I think you've actually given us, just in a minute, you gave us a real key insight into, I think, some of the things that folks might be talking to us about as this task force is getting questions from people, things like accessibility and where you put, because it's not just about housing, folks, is it? It's about making sure that the housing fits the person and the person's needs, which all that equity and everything is underscored by that as well. So I think the rest of the folks on this committee will definitely have questions for you. What you missed was just a conversation around making sure that we incorporate an equity lens and using the framework that's already been incorporated through the One Fairfax, but making sure we're not just talking about it, that we're really looking at that and addressing those inequities. And so what the task force right now is to look at getting that input from the right people. And so in the 4 minutes or so we have left, I think what would be helpful if we can get to it is to look at, if November is the deadline for getting this report, can we walk away backwards? Because Nora asked a lot of questions. So what do we need to get done by when? If maybe we can have that sorted out today, then maybe next Monday we can build on that and actually firm up some times. So when is the drop down date for getting this report ready? So this will be Tom and Tom question.
I would say, Tom, end of first week of November at the latest.
That sounds right.
Okay.
I'll just point out also for our scheduling purposes, next Monday is a holiday, so I'm not sure how many folks are going to be working and available.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. I will not be. So I don't know about other people. So I guess the question would be, do we want to do a different day? But maybe we can do that real quickly before we go. So do folks have thoughts though? So if November is when we need to have the finished report, the other question is who pulls the report together? Who needs what by when?
Well, I would like to add that they're probably, based on what I'm reading, and the report just came out, I will email the group that as soon as the meeting is over with, but they're expecting, not just here in Virginia, but across the country, they're expecting a slew of people to be evicted. And they've tried to put a moratorium on that to cover all 50 states. And the owners of the properties are really pissed off about that, because the eviction is rising. I don't know how many of you know that when we got to the pandemic here at Circle Towers, there were people who were self-evicting. They did not even wait to get a notice. They just knew that they couldn't pay their rent and they just started leaving, period. And we've had 2 dumpsters out there that have been there since 2020 that are filled up every day with what people are leaving behind. I've been here since 2006. I have never, ever seen dumpsters outside of the building like that. And the exodus of people, mostly Latino, mostly women with children, and minorities that are leaving. And it is a putrid here. And if this is any indication of what's going on countrywide, it's deplorable to say the least. But here in Fairfax County, we have a government that is actually helping us to move forward because they want that. They understand what the needs are, and they just need us to tell them how to get to the point of that. We should take advantage of that as quickly as possible.
I totally agree. And we're hearing about these evictions. Hopefully maybe they'll come back with another moratorium, we don't know. But it would be great if we can touch some of those people who are being evicted because they can contribute to the information gathering that we are embarking on. So I apologize, but I think because I have another meeting starting at 10:30, already started. So what I'm gonna ask, if you all don't mind, and John, please, if you wanna do differently, just jump in. But I'm gonna ask her 2 things. One is Tom Barnett, maybe if you guys can help us with a skeleton timeline, because I think that will really help inform our process and keep us on task and
Sure.
on track. Just in terms of deliverables, what are the things that we need to do, what the deliverables are in terms of time, and then we'll just work on that. And then the second ask is, can folks meet on Tuesday? Is there another day next week we could meet so we don't lose momentum? Or do we have to just miss a week? If we can meet like on Tuesday, that might be helpful so we can keep going. I don't know what people's schedules are.
You want a show of hands?
Yes, please. Who can
Put
meet?
their hands up, raise their hands.
Tuesday. Okay, so now, Mara, does Tuesday work for you?
I was trying to find my hand, but yes. it
Okay.
does.
So the question is, so Tuesday, what in the afternoon? I could do like a Tuesday I could do a 1 or 2, but I have standing meetings the other times. So I could do 1 or 2, or does any of that work for folks?
Anytime in the afternoon works for me.
Anytime works for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So can
Eleanor,
we,
let's pick a time that works for you, and then we can record it and people can jump in and see it. 'Cause
Okay. All
time
right.
is the essence.
Thank you, that helps. So I can do 1 o'clock on Tuesday. So can we just, and can I ask, somebody is helping us? Malia, is it you? Were you helping us with the scheduling?
Aaron, Carrie's assistant, but I can send a message if need be.
Could you, if I just, you know what, I'll get our executive assistant to do it. So we'll just send an invite for Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and then Tom is gonna help us with a timeline to keep us on task. And I think that's all we have time for, quite frankly, but thank you so much to everybody. Norma, we're obviously gonna be tapping into Amanda, and Pam Michelle, it's good to see you again.
It's
So
great to be here.
yeah, unless folks have
I'm a
something
glutton
else.
for punishment.
You and the dogs, everybody welcome, even the dogs in the neighborhood who keep barking. So I'm sorry, I'm sounding so rushed, but I do have to hop off. So unless somebody has something to add, I'm gonna take my leave and say goodbye and have a good day. John? We're good?
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
See you guys on
everyone.
Tuesday.
All right.
Thank you.